Hey everybody, welcome to Thursday Live. I so appreciate you joining me again this Thursday, and if you're a first timer, welcome. And for those of you who are a part of Thursday Live and guests, you're in for a treat. Here's my sidekick, Lincoln, at my feet with his live Lincoln cam. How many dogs do you know who have their own cam? Well, Lincoln does. So I want to welcome each and every one of you to Thursday Live, and I'm really excited about today. We're going to be talking about, as usual, things that are going on in my spiritual life that I think, if I've been wrestling with them, if I'm learning them, if I'm being impacted by them, could probably be of some benefit to you. And again, if you're a guest, we're just breaking away from all the other stuff that weights in on our life, adds gravity to our life, and we're focusing in on Jesus and trying to get a couple of steps ahead in our faith. And God's been doing all kinds of things in my life recently and kind of introducing me in new ways to a concept that, I've been learning about for decades as a Jesus follower and as a pastor. But one of my favorite books in the Bible is the book of Joshua. It's an Old Testament book, and I love Joshua for so many reasons. I love Joshua because I can relate to what God called him to do and become as a leader. He wasn't Moses. Moses was the old forefather, foundational pioneer leader who God used to really author great things for Israel. And Joshua had to follow that great man of God as a leader. And he was this young guy who had to follow in the steps of a giant. And I know what that's like. God hasn't called me to start churches along the way, to pioneer new movements. He called me to step into churches that had their own form of a Moses. And I had to step in as a young person without influence, without renown, and fill those steps. That's especially true in the church I now pastor. It's called Northridge now. When I came, it was called Temple Baptist. And the pastor who was really, really behind the great legacy and heritage of Temple had giant footsteps in his followers' view. And in fact, he had died, and two pastors had come in and led the church between me and him, and he was still the guy. And here I was, a person with no influence, no renown, way younger than I should have been, and I had to step in and follow. So I relate to Joshua. I also relate to Joshua because, man, he had to fight the fight. He had to, with great faith, embrace the challenge of leading out for God, leading God's people through the challenges and difficulties and warfare of stepping into God's kingdom. And boy, do I know what that's like. But I've been learning in greater personal ways one of the truths that I've known for a long time, and it's out of Joshua chapter 3. I encourage you to read the book on your own, and you can see it. But, they had the history of Moses leading them through the Red Sea. God parted the Red Sea. It was crazy. They went through. But now they need that kind of miracle again to get into the promised land from where they were, east of the Jordan. They had to go across the Jordan, and it was at flood stages. It was raging violently. There was no way they could cross the Jordan into the promised land unless God did a miracle, and it was a scary thing. And I've been there. The Jordan can be a violent and treacherous thing, quick moving, and there's no way even active people, athletic people could get through it, let alone the millions of Israelites that needed to go through. And so God had to do a miracle. He had to part the Jordan, but God wasn't going to do it until they took a step of faith. You can read about it in Joshua 3. Joshua said, you priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant have to go and actually step into the raging, flood-staged torrent of the Jordan, and then I'll do a work. But you have to step first. You have to step into the unknown. You have to step into the impossible. You have to step into the risky. You have to step into the dangerous. And trust me. And I don't know what raged in their heart. I don't know how long they were tenuous about it. But the fact is, they did. They stepped right down into the raging Jordan. And then God did his work. God asked them to do what was in their power to do. You can step into the Jordan. And then God opened the door to what they could not do. He stopped the flow of the Jordan. It piled up, and they were able to walk through safely, securely, and confidently on dry ground. And then once through, God then let the Jordan flow again. And this is just, it's got so much relevance in my life in the past, but it's got a great deal of relevance to what I'm experiencing right now. And I could give you a bunch of examples, but I'm going to give you just one example. But I want you to remember the lesson, and then I'll kind of parrot it again at the end before we pray and end this. But the lesson is simply that God moves when we choose to trust and follow him. And what God asks us to do is not what we can't do. God asks us to do what we can do, what's in our power to do right now, though there might be risk in it, though there might be scary and treacherous things to face when we do it. He asks us to trust him with what we can do. And when we do, he opens up doors to things we can't even comprehend. And I want to give you one example. And in this one example, I'm going to be able to update you on something that many of you are interested in knowing about. I'm going to be able to inform some of you on something that we think is exciting, that God's really working in, that you don't know anything about. But it all flows down to something that we did a couple of Easters ago. And to get you into it and then to update you on it, I want to have you watch this.
Ever since I was a child, there wasn't a day that went by I didn't dream of becoming a soldier. I was born for it. I've killed so many people. But for what?
Special assignment just came through.
We're here to guard a body. Strange, I know, but I don't make the rules.
Sir, whose tube is this?
Go on. Make sure he's fresh. Apparently, he said something about raising himself up from the dead. We're here to make sure he doesn't have any help.
What's wrong with him? He's been acting weird all day. Ever since we whacked, what's his name?
His followers. Where can I find them?
Felix, you ask too much.
You think a man could just leave the army and get away?
Why? You thinking about running? There's nowhere to run.
Is this real?
Yes, it is real.
But I killed him.
So did we all.
Tell the world. Tell everyone about it.
So, what you just experienced was the trailer for our 2020 short film called The Soldier, and you can see I've added someone to the screen. This is the writer, the director, the underlying foundational passion behind that short film, my son Blake. So you can in your comments say, hey Blake, great to see you, bud.
you, buddy.
It's I get to interview a bunch of different people on Thursday Live, but very seldom do I get to interview someone that I know so well, care so much about, and has made such an impact on our ministry, my own son. So glad to have you, dude.
It's great to finally be on.
So I have, if you think about it, I have two family members with me right now. I have Lincoln at my feet. Here's Lincoln. There he is. And I have my son, Blake.
My brother right there.
Yeah, that's right. Brother by another mother. And by the way, Blake has never been willing to crawl up under my desk and join me for Thursday Live. So, Lincoln's got something on him. Okay. So, hey, Blake, I think it'd be fun, and we're going to talk about the short film first. They just saw the trailer, but I think it's an amazing application to the Joshua passage I just talked about. How you just take a step of faith, and then God opens doors that you couldn't have comprehended. And that was true of the short film too. Help me talk through with them how the short film came about, and then we can tell them about how God parted the Jordan for that.
Okay. Well, we were in a planning meeting for Easter, and with every meeting, I'm always pitching, "Hey, let's make a film. Let's make a film."
That's true.
Because I just have this unshakable passion for narrative storytelling like that and film, and I'm just such a film geek anyway. So we started talking about what would we do. And this was 2019. No. This was 2020.
No, it had to have been the fall of 19. I think it was the fall of 19.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you had to shoot it before we went into the, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. So it was a different world then. But I basically was told in that meeting, I wasn't told no, so that was good. And they were like, all right, so pitch us an idea next week. So we have weeks, but every week, a creative planning meeting. So I went home, and in between, the normal regular Northridge video stuff that I have to do, started conceptualizing a narrative short film that we could do. And I somehow landed on that verse in Mark about the centurion who saw Jesus die and literally was convinced he was the Son of God by he killed him, but by the end of it, something had happened in his heart where he saw Jesus for who he was. And there's just one verse about him. So
and nothing else, no other context, no pre or follow up to that. That's right.
I know. And it's so interesting to think that he went home from work that day, or he walked back to the barracks after saying, I just killed the Son of God. There's a lot of potential subtext to that story and narrative lines that the Bible doesn't share, but that got my creative juices flowing, where I thought, man, what was that walk home like? What was the next day like? What if he had been assigned to guard the tomb? I mean, that's super, super dramatic and potentially really impacting as a story. I mean, it's kind of fan fiction, obviously, but it's all within the realm of plausibility. And so I wrote within a couple weeks. I think I wrote a screenplay for it, and everyone seemed to really like it. And we started getting all this stuff together, casting people. We obviously had a very tiny budget, tinier than tiny, but I mean, you guys still blessed us with the ability to even do it, which is all I cared about. And we hired actors we pretty much threw the thing together, and we filmed it in 3 days in Texas.
But talk about parting the Jordan. Your budget was what most people do to buy dinner for themselves, planning for any kind of creative event, and you were able to make a short film out of it. The 3 days, that's about what it takes to drive to the place where they're going to shoot for a month. But God parted that Red Sea. You got actors, you got people involved. We have a bunch of creative people that helped with sets and grips, and even a director of photography who was able to invest. But here's the amazing thing. So we put our toes in the water on this thing because we were going to show it as a part of our Easter celebration in pre-pandemic creative mode. And then what happened?
Well, we were filming, and the whole short film takes place over 3 days, which is hilarious. We shot it in 3 days, and it takes place entirely in 3 days. So that's interesting. So we basically made the thing in real time.
From the crucifixion to the resurrection, of course.
Yep. And anyway, I was on set. I think it was the second day, and one of our actors started wearing a mask, and I was like, "What is going on?" You know, like why? And I even asked him, like, "Why are you wearing a mask?" He's like, "Oh, I don't want to get COVID. My brother is, has special needs or something like that." And I'm like, "Huh, interesting." Like that was the first encounter while we're filming. Like he would wear it between things, and so like we weren't reading the news. We didn't have time to sleep. We finished, I think it was March 14th when we wrapped. So I was driving back from Texas when everything went haywire. Literally, we got back, and the next day was that first Thursday Live you did, where you.
Then it had to be March. I think it was March 7th when I had to close the church because we were so uncertain about the pandemic and stuff. It was somewhere around there, but I mean,
it was, well, yeah, whatever the dates were, we literally got back, and the next day we were filming that on our stage with you, saying we just don't want to put people at risk. We don't know what's going on. I mean, everything changed then. So
yeah,
that was crazy.
Well, and by the way, it's happened to me so many times. I have no clue what God's intending, but he's certainly wanting me to do what I can do right now with the knowledge I have, with the wisdom he's given me, take a step. And that's what we did with this short film. I mean, God had put you and your team together, the passion, the idea, it fit with Easter. Let's take that step. Little did we know that he was going to part the Jordan for us because of that short film. We had an Easter service because, we had no audience. We couldn't invite people into the auditorium, but we had a short film that became the central piece of that entire Easter. And it was like, oh my gosh, if we just trust his voice and trust him enough to follow the things he can do, it's crazy. And that was a great Easter, even though we hated having the building closed. Now, tell me what happened on the heels of that. I know we've had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who have viewed it and experienced it. We've had feedback, but we also got some awards, right?
Yeah, we did. We submitted to multiple film festivals. We were able to travel out, and we won awards. We were able to meet a lot of people through that, and a lot, like you said, a lot of people saw it. So we had it opened doors for us that we didn't otherwise even know were there. People in the industry started asking us about, oh, is this like a proof of concept script? Do you have a feature length version of this? Because I think there's more to the story. And the answer to that was no. We did not have a feature length script. And the lady from Sony, the Christian side, told us, you should make a feature length version of this, and we want to read it. So obviously,
which doesn't happen, by the way, for major studios to do that kind of a thing with a little local church, thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just amazing. So I took, our short film was like 33 pages or so, 32. And a typical screenplay is over 100. And so I just started thinking about the story and praying about it and wondering how it could be. At first, I didn't even like the idea of making. I thought the short was told enough of the story, but then I started thinking of how Felix, the soldier, the centurion, what was his boyhood like? What could have gotten him to the point? God obviously got him to the cross where he finally goes, this is the Son of God. That's pretty profound. There had to be a trajectory. Obviously the guy was born and had a childhood and all that stuff. So I started imagining it, and man, I'm just saying the floodgates opened story wise. And I just was able to really put something together that made the story as if God had literally been preparing him for that moment from the time he was 8 years old. And it's just overwhelming. And it's just a really cool, twisty, turny story. And anyway, I finished that relatively quick. I mean, probably within a month. Like I said, I'm doing this in this chair that I'm sitting in right now in the basement as my banshees are screaming upstairs, and I'm writing this treatment, and we submitted it to that lady who asked for it. She gave me notes, and she was very positive about it.
But let's be honest. The idea of making a feature-length film, I mean, it's not like we don't have day jobs. It's not like we're not a church. It's not like we're there. It's not like we barely made it possible for you to make a short film. So your creative juices are flowing. You're writing this thing. You're getting some affirmation on the outside. But what was your view of the actual possibility at the time of moving towards a feature length?
Well, impossible. I mean, I would make jokes like, "Hey, let's get Pops, good old Pops, to give us a budget for a movie." But it's just like we have so much. We're constantly doing so much. But yeah, so I didn't really. It seemed like a very big long shot, but and so much so that I put away the script. I mean, it was in a cupboard right next to this computer, gathering dust. That lady loved it, gave me notes, talked about maybe a mini series potential, and I wasn't into that idea. Anyway, so it just kind of gathered dust on the shelf for about a year or so, actually a year and a half. And I was actually working on a different script that I've been, working on in my free time and all that stuff. And then you came to me, literally in November 2021, and said, "I think God wants us to make the Soldier feature film." And I was like, what?
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is most people would think, okay, you guys, you young next generation guys with this creative talent and ability, wore me down. You kept wore me down. And the truth isn't that at all. I certainly knew about what was going on with Sony. I certainly knew about the stuff that you had put in your drawer. I know it wasn't refined enough to where you were confident with it yet, etc. I knew that you were working on other projects too. But it was an internal thing with me. It was really, and I try to stay open to the voice of God. I'm older, but I really like to stay dynamic and fresh in my relationship. And I just really believed it was time. And I think before I told the church, in fact, I know before I told the church, I told you, I really believe that we should move forward with that. And I'm thinking about making it the Christmas offering. And I can't remember what you said. I can't remember. I really can't. I don't know if you were floored or what.
I don't think I said anything. I think I literally told Nina, my wife, and we both were like, it felt it felt so out there that I actually didn't even, I don't know. I was frozen. It was shock because honestly, I had moved past that in my head. And usually I do pound and pound and pound and try to influence, but I was so beyond it that it's just, when you said that to me, it was literally like you were speaking some other language to me. So.
Yeah, it was. And see, again, I want to keep this connected to Joshua. We put our foot in the water, yes, about the short film. You put your foot in the water about that feature length, but you did what you could do, put it on a shelf, didn't harangue, didn't manipulate, didn't charge. And God then kind of parted me. I had no intention of making a feature length film. I'm a pastor. I want to do stuff for the weekend and, help other leaders and churches, but I couldn't shake it. And it was so, for those of you listening, it's so contrarian. It's an easy thing at Christmas time to stand up and say, to honor Jesus for his birthday, we're going to give compassion money for building a hospital, which we've done, for reshaping the development of communities in Nicaragua, which we've done, for supporting orphans in Haiti, which we've done, for a ton of things around the metropolitan Detroit area, which we've done. So that's easy. It's contrarian to get up and say, hey, instead of that, we're going to receive a Christmas offering for making a feature-length movie. And talk about putting your feet in a raging floodwater river. That's crazy.
That made me very nervous.
Yeah.
I was very nervous.
I,
And I didn't believe. I mean, you were the only one. And by the way, your leadership throughout the years has always been creativity based. But even this was, and very conducive to the creative process, which we love. You always say Christians should be the most creative because we know the creator, which that makes 100% sense. But it is like 1% true,
yeah,
sadly.
that's
And
true.
so, I mean, we're on the same page there, but even I couldn't believe that you went that far.
Well, I had to, you have to walk through certain parameters, and everyone I talked to, they'd start out saying, "What?" And then I would cast the vision of it. I mean, 16 words, wake the world up to Jesus. There are 6 billion plus people on this planet. The pandemic taught us they're not going to be in the four walls of our building. Even in the best of the times, the four walls of our building only hold so many. And God's given us these things, these talents, these passions, these abilities, these awards. Every step we've taken, he's part of the Jordan. Why? I just think he really wants us to do it. And then I was able to convince the people closest to me. And then the day I stood up and cast that vision, I said, I think it's one of the greatest acts of compassion we could do, because God so loved the world that he gave his son so that we could be redeemed. Yes, water's great. Yes, hospitals are great. Yes, education's great. Yes, community development's great. But the gospel's the greatest thing. And we have the capacity to maybe share the gospel with, way more people than we can naturally. Why not do a film? That's the language of the day.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, like, Glory of Christmas is our biggest outreach event of the year. And when we do like 12 shows, we fill our auditorium and we reach 35,000 people. With a movie, now I'm not saying with a bad movie, I'm saying with a movie that is obviously that God is behind, and that we bring our best offering and we do the best we can, we could reach more than GOC reaches in 1 second.
Absolutely. And by the way, the short film, which was what our best effort to put our toes in the water, such as they were. I couldn't even afford sandals for your shoes. So, I mean, just your toes, reached hundreds of thousands of people. So it's a no-brainer, but it's a weird thing for a pastor Sam to say, hey, give this Christmas towards a feature-length film. And some of you have given, and this is kind of going to be update material for you and all that. But I stood there saying, I know it's the right thing to do. I know I'm doing the right thing. I don't know if people are going to give to it. We normally do, let's say between, let's say around $400,000 is what we would normally do for a Christmas offering, anywhere from 3 to 5. And I thought, man, I don't know what we'll get, but I knew it was the right thing to do. It goes back to put your toes in the water, God parts the Jordan. And
as it's still kind of pandemic-y.
It was. We had opened the church a little over a year before, but people were still really hesitant to come in. We had no post-pandemic move, especially in Michigan. The auditorium we were still running about a 10th, maybe a 20th of what we did pre-pandemic. It was weak. So it was like, let's do something. And but the people, man, long story short, I won't bury the lead. God parted that Jordan, and out of the last 5 Christmas offerings, this was better than 3 of them, and really close to the other 2. This thing ran ahead, and I tell you what, it overwhelmed me with the sense of awe and gratitude for Northridge Church, because here's a church that's in it for the 16 words, to wake the world up to Jesus, show his love, tell his truth, and involve them. And they were willing to give to this. And for all of you, just to know that you helped it to be a sensational Christmas offering. As I said, it wouldn't pay for the whole movie, but we wanted it to be a seed offering, more toes in the water for the movie, and it is so amazing. But this is where it goes to the next part of stepping your toes in the water, trusting God. we were so new at this, we had no idea what we didn't know. And so we knew, okay, we're going to step into this. And then you find out, oh my gosh, the things involved. And we had nothing lined up. We thought we were going to have to create our own wheel with our own spokes and our own dirt highway to travel on and piece it together like we did with that short film. And we were willing, and we believed God could do that. We had talent. We knew we had the creative talent for the story. You were writing the script, and we believed it was good, had some outside influences on that. And we knew we had the ability to produce it, kind of like make the film a little bit, but to distribute it, to get it outside of the church, to go forward, and to really get the right kind of elements we didn't know. But that's when God says, okay, you put your toes in the water. You trusted me enough to stand on that platform. My people trusted me enough to give towards this thing. Now stand back and watch. Mm-hmm. And you, I'll finish that part, and then you can comment on it. So we didn't know what we were going to do next. We were trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out how to figure out the budget, locations. There were only a couple of places that could be shot: Utah, Texas, Morocco, Italy. Can't go to the Middle East and do it. And we're trying to figure that stuff out. How does that work? Just all these things we didn't know. We didn't have any systems in place for it.
But it was evident already that God wanted it to move forward, because even when you went to the meeting to find out how the Christmas offering was, I was like, prepare to be depressed, buddy. I had so little, and I would have understood, it's like, it felt so weird that I would have been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But you were like, no, don't, you actually told me, don't, basically don't limit God. And of course you were right.
Yeah. But yet I can say don't limit God, and then I put my own limits on God. And just so you know, all of you, it's like, no matter how big your faith is, it's way too small. Mm-hmm. Ephesians 3:20 says God can do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. And I'm going to tell you, I can ask and imagine a lot, and God can do way more. And so as much as I can tell someone like Blake not to limit God, at the same time, I'm putting my limits on God, because I can only do what I can do. But that's all God wants me to do. Do what you can do. You can stand on a platform and cast a vision for this thing. You can, put together elements to move forward with this thing. But long story short, so not knowing how we were going to move forward in producing this thing, all of a sudden, my executive assistant came to me and handed me a card. This is post the Christmas offering, post all this different stuff. We're doing our own wheel making. And the card was of a person who had come to a business leaders forum at Northridge Church 5 years ago, and gave us a card, who was a part of a production company that had been formed in the state of Michigan, because Michigan became a tax subsidized movie making state for a while. It's not now. And it's like, and said, they come to our church. This person comes to our church. And I went, what? I remember showing you the card. I looked at the card and said, really? What kind of production company could this be? And I showed you, and you said, what? And then you started Googling it, getting out there, and it turns, this is a legit production company, right? I mean, what have you found? I mean, they've done big stuff, right?
You can literally, you can name the biggest actor, and they've worked with them.
Yeah, and by the way, just so you know, all of this is still in process. It's dynamic. It's moving. There's different things, but we just want you to know that's how the story of God is. Everything's dynamic. Everything's always moving. Nothing's concrete. Everything's always abstract. We're not going to give you names and all that stuff right now, but this was and is a legit production company that's done big and small, but by small, I mean 10 times bigger than anything we've ever contemplated.
100 times.
Yeah, right. So I called this person, this leader, and said, I had my assistant call and say, would you be willing to have a meeting? And she said, it's a woman leader, and she said, yeah, but why does he want to talk to me? And she told a story, said, oh my gosh. And so I had the meeting, and I told her what was going on. She goes, I've been prompted by God ever since I saw the vision of the Christmas offering to contact you, but I just haven't. I can't believe you're calling me. And so then Blake, you and I had a meeting with her, and what was your view of that?
Well, I mean, it's this whole thing, this whole situation from the Christmas, from you telling me, I think we need to do this for the Christmas offering. Every step of the way, I have my, I was raised in this. So I'm very aware of, like, I have faith in God. I know he's in control. I know all these things, but at the same time, there's times where you're just like, you're just not feeling it, and it's probably because of your own lack of investment in your faith, because it can become cruise control. So I'm just, I'm being amazed. So that meeting, I just felt like, wow, God, like a little car, it went great is basically the lead. It went great with her, and it was amazing. It's just like from a little card that was in your executive assistant's desk for 5 years, just sitting there before we'd even done our first short film. It's just been sitting there waiting in a pile of cards from 5 years ago, and God placed it there, and she just happened your executive assistant just happened to clean out her desk and almost threw them all away, but then went through them and saw it. So it was like, it's the statistical likelihood of any of that, even that meeting happening is almost, I mean, it's only God. Only
Right.
God could have. And that's how I feel about every meeting since. It's
And
like,
long story short, this production company, because they do big stuff, they're the real deal. They don't take unsolicited scripts from nobodies. They certainly don't, partner with churches to do. I mean, it's a joke. It just doesn't happen.
if we had called them, they probably wouldn't have had the energy to even pick up.
No, it would have been one of those laughable turnaways kind of thing. But because of the way it designed, and remember the Joshua story, the Jordan doesn't stop flowing at flood stage and stack up so that 1 million people can walk over. It doesn't happen. But that's what happened. Joshua and the priests did what they could, and then God did what he promised. And so out of that story, long story short, contacts were made. The leaders of the production house read part of the script, met with us. We were able to talk about our view, our philosophy, why we're doing this. The most creative people should be the people who know the Creator, and we're sick and tired of culture dictating forward movement instead of Christ. And they responded to that, and they read the script then, and then we met with them, and we're talking. It's like we thought, just give us a couple of breadcrumbs, maybe, of advice, and now there's like a bigger relationship that might be forming. All we did was cast a vision to do the feature-length film and do what you could do. You wrote the script. We did what we did, cast it out there, get people involved. We started doing everything, and then God has started to bring pieces that can make this really possible in a bigger way. Because these production groups don't just have the ability to do pre-production stuff. They have the ability to do production stuff, including casting and production and these kind of help in that regard. They also they work with Hollywood script writers, and this is something we can give away. Our script has now been read by true Hollywood film screenwriters and loved, actually, your script. Blake wrote this script, and they love it, inspiration on the page. And now you're going to be working with them on polishing the script for a real movie.
Yeah, for the final shooting.
You don't feel good about that, do you?
I feel awful about that. I literally, it's been such a labor of love. I mean, writing, like I said, right here in this chair, thinking, my mom's going to read this.
Yeah. And she did. But she's not the only one.
Greatest script she's ever read. And the only script. But no, we've had real people that have real scrutinizing eyes read it. And the responses have been very humbling to me. I just can't believe people are even reading it, and we now have the opportunity to work with a guy out of New York starting next week, it looks like.
On
to
script
just start
polishing.
script polishing and making it ready. I mean, making it nice and sleek and ready to be shot. And I mean, there's so much that goes into this stuff that most people don't even think about because they just watch a movie and they're like, oh, done. Yeah, that's great. But God's opening doors for us that we couldn't have opened ourselves. We didn't even know there were doors there.
No, and we couldn't have. We could have called for 100 days and absolutely had no relationship with anyone. And instead, God said, hey, you put your toes in the water, watch me. And it just listening to the voice of God, trusting, and it's taken, decades and decades for me to get a sense of the difference between ideas that I have because I just had Mexican food and ideas that God might really be in, and not to be so impetuous that you just jump, but let it take root and germinate. By the way, we did a 6-minute short film, and then we did 25-minute short film. We've shown that it can go. So you don't just jump off the mountain, but God's really, really, really involved, and he's doing things we couldn't have imagined. And so, Blake, I just, you're the creative script writer behind this. You're going to be directing this thing, and you've had a lot of affirmation in that. But I just wanted everybody to know, and I wanted to express my gratitude for those of you who've trusted enough that vision of waking the world up to Jesus through the language of film, and we're willing to sacrifice towards that. It's an exciting thing. And now, by the way, we have a prayer team that meets praying for the Soldier film, right?
Every Saturday in 16 Central, which is the giant glass room at Northridge, Plymouth, we have people that pray at 416 every Saturday. And I mean, we have people praying that aren't even in the state every Saturday at 416 for this movie. And obviously we want to keep building that because this is not something we could have done, and we're very aware of that.
Absolutely.
And God is obviously showing up, and our vision was huge, but it's like God is honoring that in a honestly mind-blowing way.
Yeah. He's blown my mind. I'm just telling you, I am so shocked as to the possibilities that are now present that I couldn't have imagined when I cast this vision. And I'm being very serious. I just, and I'm really proud of you, Blake. I mean, using it, you could have used your creativity for a lot of things, but you're using it for kingdom things. And that was a sacrifice, has been, still is. But yet, God's opening doors now to where it's kind of cool. But I'm really grateful for all of you who gave to that. And we want you to stay tuned because it's our commitment to share not just the final product, but to share what God does in making the final product possible. And we want you praying for this, that we choose the right partners to go forward with in production, that God brings them right in, that God gives us wisdom. And then distribution. These production companies have the ability to sit down with the Netflixes and the Hulus of this world to stream it into people's homes around the world, but also theatrical things, and not just domestic, but international. It's just amazing what could happen. But we're still in the journey, believing that God can do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. And I think that as big as I think it can be now, I'm still, looking at little dust petals, dust mites to what God can do with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. And we're going to be, Northridge is going to be involved in everything, like you said. We are going to be, this is so initial stages. I love that we're updating people because a lot of people have been asking me too, what's going on with the movie? What's going on with the movie? People didn't even know that it was a successful Christmas
offering. Yeah.
Because we're on to Easter or whatever. It's just insane how the Northridge pace is.
By the way, we went from that offering to then doing close to $200,000 of bags for orphans, and then $750,000 to help in Ukraine. And so, and by the way, people were wondering, you're doing a movie for Christmas offering? And then out of that, he does almost $1 million worth of compassion stuff through Northridge post the movie.
Right.
And so, it's like he blows my mind. The people he's given us blow my mind. But okay, one last thought before we say goodbye. Do you have anything that's on your head that we haven't said?
No, just keep praying for the process. Nothing's in stone, and it's literally a miracle to even make a movie at all, let alone a good movie that can actually impact people. And we're gonna literally bleed for this to hopefully reach people that, who knows, there are teenagers that would never set foot in our church. There's people, we have the ability, and God's opening doors for us to be able to literally inspire people in the name of Jesus in a way that we never have before. And that's
Exactly right.
really, it's crazy and it's heavy, and we need to be very prayerful about it and humble, because this process was very humbling, realizing how dumb we were to think we could even do a movie. It's just,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
It's not too big for God, but it's too big for us. But he's showing himself faithful. And I just want people to know too, and I know you do, Blake, that it's not about putting together a movie. It's about honoring our Creator with a movie that's worthy of carrying his message. In other words, we don't want to have some of this podunk, lacking excellence kind of stuff because we can say we did a movie. It's got to be as good as what's out there in culture, or it's not worthy of his name. And so that's kind of where we're going. As The Chosen is for a TV series, so we want to go beyond that for a movie.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, Blake, again, proud of you. Thanks for spending some time with me. Can't think of anyone I'd rather spend time with. And everybody, I hope that you'll be praying and encouraging, and thanks for your comments here. But I appreciate it, Blake.
Thank you.
Okay, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, so to end this thing up, I just want to remind you that there's a spiritual lesson in all of this, and it's basically that experiencing God just takes a little step of faith. Now listen, experiencing God in all of his abundance just takes a little step of faith, because when we trust him with what we can do, and we can take a step, he opens doors to what we can't possibly do. And I don't think we've done a good job even communicating in this Thursday Live how unbelievably unprepared we were for what God was calling us to do, but how unbelievably prepared he was to get us to where we needed to be and connected to who we need to be connected with. And so it's pretty exciting. We're not there yet. There's a lot to go. We have to be faithful with each step. We're having to take that next step. But I want to encourage you. I don't know where you're at and what you're facing, but I do know this. You can trust God. And if you want to experience him in his fullness, take your next step into obeying him. Take your next step into following him. Take your next step into knowing him. Take your next step into serving him. And you'll never be disappointed. You'll finally be a part of something that's bigger than your ability and can be done only by God, because God can do immeasurably more than we ask or think according to his power that's already at work in us. If you know Jesus, you know the power of the world. All right. Thanks for joining me. If you're a guest, I hope that won't be your last time. I hope you'll share this with everyone you know, because we want people to know the updates about the feature-length movie, The Soldier. We want them praying. We want them engaged and be looking for updates here. And don't forget, we're in a series on relationships at Northridge every weekend right now during the month of May. I'm excited about being back this weekend. I hope you'll join me in person or online. And don't forget, next week, you have another opportunity to join me and invite others to join me on Thursday Live. So just before I say goodbye, let's pray. God, thanks so much that you do speak, that you do make yourself known, that you do still work. And all we have to do is listen, pursue you, ask. You say if we lack wisdom, all we have to do is ask and you'll give it. And that's so true. And I just thank you for the way you're moving at Northridge Church in so many ways, and compassion and truth and involvement and growth. But God, I just thank you for the way you've gifted us with the ability to communicate in the language of the day, which is the language that's done through video, through film, through the digital experience. And thank you for a church that's been willing to embrace this. And thank you for the way that you're already resourcing it. And I just pray that you'd keep connecting us to the right people at the right time in the right way to make the film that you want us to make. I pray that you'd bless each and every person who's listened to Thursday Live, experienced this, that you'd help them to take those little steps necessary to experience your fullness. Thank you that you never disappoint us. And I pray, God, each of us would right now commit to never disappointing you. And now pour out your grace on the project of this film, on Northridge Church, and on all those who love you. And we'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, everybody. We appreciate it. See you next time.